Well, hello, beloved soul seeker. It is Julie, and I am so honored and excited to have you here for this incredible interview. Let me tell you about Robin Rice. Robin is an internationally published author, social change artist, and mentor to leaders. Through her Be Who You Are Academy, she's trained more than 15,000 students through free courses such as Training Your Inner Warrior, her virtually by design social change projects, including her latest at goodnightrobin.com, have garnered attention from major media in 30 plus countries. Her fiction and nonfiction books have been translated into 3 languages. She speaks internationally on loneliness and social change artistry, but her day job is serving as a thinking partner to high profile leaders from the political, NGO, entrepreneurial, and arts communities. All of us, are in for such a treat. Robin, I am so excited to have you here today. I know that we're going to have such a rich conversation, and I just so appreciate you being here. Welcome to the You-est You community and show.
Yay! Oh, hi, 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 hi.
Here you are.
Here I
Watching.
am.
Yes. Fantastic. You're here. All right. Well, there's
So
a
much.
lot that I want to talk about. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit. One of the things that I'm super curious about is this idea of, I call it your You-est You, your divine purpose. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in how you've kind of listened into your that higher wisdom to be and do all that you are today?
Wow, that's such a huge and important question. And how many years do we have to discuss it? Because it's been that many years I've been doing it. It's been a while now. Um, I think to me it's a step by step every single moment. There isn't an on off switch to
Hmm.
that anymore. There's just an on switch. It's always on. And how do you listen? You listen with everything. You listen with your body, you listen with your chills, you listen with your when someone says something and it either feels like it sings or it clanks,
Hmm.
everything. And then of course, if you're so inclined to be, reading the signs of the universe, then everything, the birds outside, the way the waves are crashing on a particular day, I mean, anything can help us know what we already know, is really the way I would put it. We already know it, but we don't know that we know it until we consciously tune in,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then the signals are out there.
oh, I love that so much what you said about it's always on and it's listening with everything. Was there a time in your life where you were not as in tune, or a pivotal moment where maybe a high point, or one of those moments where you were like, okay, I'm listening now, or maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that's sort of the whole story. Was I was absolutely challenged and miserable until I was 35, and then I had a sudden awakening. It was instantaneous, and I wasn't looking for it. I didn't know what happened, and it changed everything in my life. It was just instant understanding, and I crawled out of my own head and traveled the universe and said, "Wow, this is all perfect. That doesn't make sense." And I remember saying, one of the first things I actually said was, "Took you long enough. I can't believe you let me sleep for 35 years. What were you thinking?"
Yeah,
Like someone who'd been upset for, oversleeping in the morning.
yeah,
And then I remember thinking, who are you talking to and what are you talking about? And so, all my brain synapses were still set to fire to my life history. We're all like that. So then it was a question of, how do I begin to live this in such a way that it actually makes sense and take this deeper journey that we're all on. And how far we take it and how deeply we take it is different. But and what flavor of ice cream we're gonna call it: chocolate, vanilla, pistachio, ayahuasca, whatever.
right.
um, but it's still ice cream. So we're all on the same journey.
Were you in a career that shifted? Like, it's really interesting. don't want to get into my story, but mine was at 35 as well. I was like, oh wow, I
Oh,
wonder what that is about 35. Really,
I
uh,
know it is a thing.
it is a thing. Okay, is it a thing? Because
It is. Oh, it absolutely is a thing. 35 is the most common age to have a major breakthrough, in my experience. And you can also have one if you didn't get one in your 35 or you didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
Sometimes it tends to come back around in the 50s. But for sure, 35, I've heard so many people say, and mine was within weeks of my 35th birthday. So it's usually really right on the nose.
Unbelievable. And were you like in a career that didn't fit you, or what was going on? I'm curious what the wake up call, like this awakening, was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was a full-time mom. I'd written books, but I was still full-time momming. And, I had an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I just knew, I remember with my first husband, it was actually Thanksgiving time. And I remember bringing him to listen to Toni Morrison on TV. Tony was on with Oprah. And I was like, this is what I keep saying, this big life. This is what I keep talking about. And, and he looked at me and he said, uh, do you need more money? Well,
Right.
no, I don't need more money.
Right.
So that was the precursor to me saying, I'm going to do something I never thought I would do. I'm going to leave my husband. I don't know why. I just have to. And I'm going to go do, I don't know what, but I just have to. So that was, and then after I made that decision, I had the waking up, not before. So
Wow, 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 wow. Can I ask you a little bit? I'm just curious because I can
yeah, anything.
imagine people are like, tell me more about the wake. Like, did you hear it? Did you see it? Did you feel it? Was it like, blocks of thought? Was it like a little bubble above your head? Did you get a vision? Like what,
Yeah,
I'll get it differently. I'm curious what your flavor is.
right, exactly. So mine was very, very powerful, in which I just dropped my identity as Robin, completely.
Yeah.
And I literally it felt like a funnel opened up above my head, and I climbed out it, and I went and I just saw the whole universe. I saw every book I would write. I saw my children, and just everything that was going to be important I saw, and I saw it as perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And given my life up to that point, you would never in a million years have thought I would think that was perfect. But I did, and it changed me. There was actually, for me, there was a second identity that came forward. And that identity, people use a lot of different terminology. I don't like any of it. I don't like any of the jargon,
Yeah.
because I just don't think it can serve it very well.
Yeah.
But whatever it was, my quote unquote spirit name, which I also have, kind of an allergy to, was walks into worlds. And my intuition said, this is not a Native American name, even though I was doing a lot of work with shamanism and I ended up teaching shamanism,
Mm.
contemporary shamanism. But it was more like I was literally in both worlds, ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality at the same time. And at the time it was kind of a 50-50, and now it's much more. I'm much more not here while I'm here. Even though I'm doing a lot here, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm not here in a lot of ways, which I guess is scary to admit on YouTube or wherever on a podcast.
No,
I'm not really here.
I love you, and I love you for saying that. It almost reminds me of the world, not in the world.
Exactly. Exactly. And,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do the job that I do if I wasn't incredibly functional and grounded and all of that sort of thing. It takes an enormous amount of being here to make something happen here.
Yeah.
So, but my truth, we would say, perhaps my essence is not very related to this world. If you will.
Hmm.
Best way I can say it.
It's interesting, Robin. I feel like there's others that I've gotten to know, talk to, even myself included. I feel like there's a lot more people having this kind of awakening, and I mean, a little bit of a hunch and a little bit of like it just feels that way. And I'm curious. I mean, love to hear your thoughts on that. Would love to talk about shamanism. There's so much we're going to talk about. I have a list here,
So much
but
here.
this is delicious. So let's
Yeah.
keep going here.
Yeah.
What's your thought? What do you see? I mean, I know you've worked with thousands
I
of people.
I do. Yeah, I've been watching the journey. As a teacher, I've been teaching the journey, but I've also been watching it with clients, with students, with all that sort of thing. I've been watching it very carefully and saying what's really going on. But to be honest, the thing that I would say is the most striking was soon after my awakening. I remember I was looking out my back window and I looked out onto maybe a 3-acre field. And it was the beginning of spring, and a few tiny little wildflowers were budding here and there, just hardly any. And I was hearing very clearly in those days. It was like this conversation and seemed very clear. And I heard something along the lines of, Robin, you think now that you're awakened or awakening that you have to awaken other people. And they said, but it's like the field out here, it's the first days of spring, and a handful of you are waking up and looking at each other and saying, yo, all the way over there, oh, over there. And you think you have to shake these buds. And they said, it doesn't work like that. It's built into nature that
Mm.
everyone will wake up. That it's our nature to wake up, and they're just blooming later than you. And there's nothing you have to do, because you can help them as they do it,
Yeah.
but you don't have to do it. It's not your job, and you don't have to worry about it. So that was 22 years ago now. And I look around and I'm like, yeah, look at the field. Look at how many people are blossoming. It wasn't like when I first started, with shamanism, I used to say I'm a shaman, and people say, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
And now if I were to say, I don't go by that anymore. That's not kind of the work that I'm offering directly. So, but if I were to talk about shamanism, they'd all think they knew what I meant, and which is even harder, because it's really hard to explain, shamanism and mysticism and alchemy and all of these greater traditions that have always been there.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I'm going on and on, but
It's amazing. No, please.
I
Well, I
think
love, yeah, what were you going to say? You were going to say,
I was just gonna say, we're awakening. The evolutionary nature of humankind has always been to grow when it needs to grow, and we need to grow. So why wouldn't we be evolving before our own eyes right now? We are.
you know what I love about this? It's the most natural, the way you said it, it resonates 100%, and it's so natural. And I always think nature is our biggest teacher.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. It makes like I'm taking a moment of like, wow, that really resonates, because that would follow suit, right? You'd have early spring, of course you would have more awakening, and that's the asking is for higher consciousness, at least to have shifts that are positive. I don't know that everyone knows to say it that way, but that's what I'm sensing.
Yeah, and I don't even think we have to ask. I don't think we get much choice in the matter. I mean, my experience is that most people don't awaken because they ask to awaken. They awaken because it's something that happens to them,
Yeah.
and it happens to some of the most unlikely people, including me.
Yep.
I had no, to me, when I was growing up, that new age section of the bookstore was that place that crazy people went. I mean,
Yep.
like, I had no background I wasn't overly well educated. So I didn't have any kind of Eastern thought background or any of the things that I went, and was voracious with after awakening.
Yeah. That's really powerful. It's so, I'm just reminded I had a similar, I mean, it was interesting for me. It was around my marriage as well. My first marriage, I had 2 kids under the age of 2. When my literally wake up call, little like middle of the night, um, that was a whole other conversation for another day. But there was a full moon over my head, and I just remember, I mean, I've had the moon, how do I say this? But I've heard it speak to me is the only way it feels. And yeah, I just remember thinking, just what the heck? But it felt very natural. I just, it's interesting, this 35 years old, this waking up, this, the little buds and more buds. I just, to me, it's very positive.
Oh, it's incredibly. And I mean, I tell people all the time, like, what kind of hubris is it that we think we're outside of nature? You think nature doesn't know
Yeah.
who we are? I mean, we become 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 7 and then 11. We grow in a very predictable order,
Yeah.
right? Why would this be somehow us be out of the province of nature? It's just, that's ludicrous.
So brilliant. I do want to ask you, I know I really want to go into the topic of loneliness, which is something you are, an expert on. Before we head into that land, because I know there are people that are probably like, well, what is shamanism and alchemy? Maybe just a quick, like you brought it up so I get like questions I can hear people asking and
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
hearing like, what is that?
What is it?
Can
It's
you
like asking me what the sky is. It's above you. I don't know. What do you say? It's a big topic.
Yeah, I guess like how
Yeah.
do you distill that into some bite-sized nuggets, Robin? You have fun with that.
I've done that for years, actually. So shamanism, I literally have practiced this so many times I can say it pretty easily.
I had a feeling.
Shamanism, if you look throughout history, throughout time, in all cultures, in all time periods, there has been someone in the tribe, in the community that was born with unusual abilities, things that stepped outside of what would be considered rational, and they became, you know, in some cultures godlike figures, but certainly the priests of, from the priest role, if you will, back then, and that sort of thing. And so it was often handed down from family to family, and this is just something that was always there. So if we think about it in our contemporary culture, why wouldn't those people still be being born? Well, they have been, but they don't have a culture that tells them and pulls them aside and says, oh, by the way, those abilities, they actually have a place in the world. And yes, they're pretty far out, but they actually have some really long-standing traditions, and the path to develop them are out there, and we have those available to us now. So you can look at shamanism, you can look at alchemy, you can look at mysticism. If you look at mysticism and shamanism, mysticism, say even Catholic mysticism, that which is seeking to be in union with God, the person who is, it's virtually the same curriculum to get there, even though all the language is different. And so we have these traditions that are now in our grasp. You can go on Amazon and order almost any book you want these days. And if you are like me and you look at all of them and you say, well, where is the synthesis? Where is it all the same thing?
Yeah.
You begin to see that we have a capacity to be more than our 5 sense self. And we make fun of it in the culture. We take it more seriously than we did 20 years ago. We think it's a fluke. I mean, I think it's something like more than 50% of people believe in ghosts, but no one, not 50%, something like 80%, some crazy amount. And yet no one talks about it. I remember earlier in my life when I was dating, I ended up dating a lot of men in the medical profession not intentionally, it just sort of happened. And they would absolutely not talk to each other about Andrew Weil or any of the alternative stuff, but they talk to me about it all the time. So we have this culture that does not allow for this blossoming, except, and even spirituality and consciousness to me are not the same thing. Spirituality is one of the missing pieces in our lives. So when we become conscious, spirituality rises up very clearly, right? It's going to come back because it needs to be healed and it needs to be whole. But what we do is we just throw it all in that category, and it's not the same thing.
Okay, we're gonna need another interview in time.
Okay.
Like I am like just holding
We
my.
can stay on this as you wish, whatever you like.
Yeah, Robin, we're gonna come back to this because I need like a round two. Everything's firing off because I think, like you just said, the one thing I'll say is this, this capacity to be more than our 5 senses. Again, it's kind of like, what I've been noticing is, again, like nature, it's natural when you get out of your brain about it. And it to me, it's a natural aspect of what we can be as humans that fortunately or unfortunately has not been looked at that way. And maybe that's starting to shift now. I'm hoping it's part of what I'm hoping to change. I'll tell you that much.
I was having a conversation with one of my sons just today about this, the term magic. And I said, the problem with that is what I mean by magic and what most people mean by magic isn't the same thing. So I can't really use the word.
Right.
Because I know what you mean or general population means, and it means irrational and not possible. And to me, it's just pre-science proving it.
Yes.
right? It's just something we don't know yet, but we can see evidence of it, right? We can see, I don't know how to use the microwave. I do know when I punch a bunch of buttons,
Yeah,
things get hot, so,
exactly.
but this conversation, first of all, it needs to be really smart, and really smart people are having this conversation. People who are leading, that's why I mentor leaders in our world are hungry for this conversation, but they need somebody to talk to who's actually going to be rational enough that they don't feel like they're going off on some deep end. And I mean, I think we all need that, not just the leaders. We all need that. We all need to be able to say, is this something that's actually real? And we need to experiment with that, not in just our own lives. Where does it come in? What magical thing creates a synchronicity? I don't know. Is it just chance? Why does your body go on fire when something feels true? Is that just chance? I mean, we've just got a lot of things to explore that are happening to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I just recently interviewed the CEO of HeartMath, and we were
Mm,
talking about
mhm.
the science behind this
Yes.
intelligence. And what I love is that there's data coming out that can share and show this is not a I hate the term woo woo. I hate it because I think it really it's like it's a way of like putting down
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what's actually true and emerging, and it makes it like a superfluous frou-frou thing, and it's not true. And the science is showing. I mean, it's just incredible to hear the science behind your heart intelligence. It's a thing. It's a real thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
It's a
And just because the culture hasn't gotten on board yet doesn't mean it isn't true.
That's right. How can people nurture their inner knowing, their intuition? Do you have ways that you just? I'm thinking like I always get, how do I do that? Like, how do I get more than my five senses? Or how do I tune into the five senses I have and then hope I can connect on a deeper level? Do you have any, I don't know, strategies or tools or ways that people listening can kind of start to nurture that?
Sure. I mean, I've been teaching these for a really long time. And, someone once asked me something like this, and I ended up teaching a 31-day course, which, by the way, is free all the time now. So it's the one you talked about. Um, I think the first thing is you, I don't want to say you, we have been culturally indoctrinated to not trust ourselves,
Yes. True.
right? And to not be able to like what we like, love what we love. We're supposed to play a particular game and step into a particular narrative. And so the first thing you have to do is see that you're doing that. You have to see where you're playing the game that everyone in the culture is playing. And that's a hard thing to do, because you're then suddenly somewhat separate from that, and even more separate from that than you might have been before. But that's the first step. Turn off the television, really, because it's just
Yeah.
hypnotizing you. It's
Yeah.
and not just the commercials, which are the worst,
Yeah.
but the actual stories embedded in the stories is, if you look at it, is a very low level of consciousness that's kind of being blasted at us. So that's the first thing, which is the hardest thing. So I'll give you something easier. That's like the hardest thing, is to say, okay, where am I? Where am I the fish, and where's the water? And know that there's water, and that the water is not me, and it's not everything. So that's a big deal. I think simply asking yourself this question, when you project onto something, when you think this is what it is, when you tell yourself a story, you just ask, is this a story? Is
Mm.
this a story that I'm making up? And if so, why? And where did it come from? I often, say, challenge the premise of your questions. So if the question is, to use a very, very common one for women, do I look fat in this? I'm
Mm.
not going to answer that question. I'm going to say, where the hell did you get that question from?
Yeah.
Why are you asking it? What matters about it? All of those things. And that takes you down the rabbit hole of the culture very quickly. So just asking yourself, where, what, how, where did I get this? And is it really I don't think you can say, is it true? Because truth is so relative.
Yeah,
It's, but you can say, is it my truth
that's
right
right.
now? Is it my truth right now? And if you can say, yes, this is my truth right now, you at least know you're on your own heroic journey.
Yeah. It's great example. That's a great real world example.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot in there. Well, and I think this ties really well to just the topic of loneliness. When you're talking about, I actually, I don't. I mean, I don't watch TV. I get my news in other ways. I read the Skim, or I um, have other ways of reading it, but I cannot watch it. It's just too much for my body sensory
Yeah.
wise. But I think that's a phenomenal, or limit TV, or just be mindful that whatever you're watching, there's way more that's coming in than you think.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the whole point about asking yourself, like the example, it's such a great one. Like, where's this question coming from? Is it even my truth? And I think, just with the amount of technology and TV, and people are just stressed. And I would imagine, that's led to an epidemic of loneliness. I mean, I'd love to hear more from you, because this is your expertise, but tell us about,
Well,
yeah,
I wouldn't claim to be an expert at this point. I hope to be someday. I'm certainly having this conversation because I think it's the most important conversation that we can have in our culture right now.
yeah.
And we're only beginning to have it. Up to now, loneliness has been, somehow our fault if we're lonely.
Mm,
Uh, People are not aware, just like you were talking about the heart math and the heart, people are not aware
yeah.
that if you go without physical contact and physical connection and energetic connection for long enough, you will physically
Mm,
be hungry in the heart in the same way you're hungry if you don't get food. It's your body's designed to send off alarm signals to say you're not safe. And of course, not feeling safe makes you go, I don't know why I don't feel safe. And so you're even less likely to go out and understand that you need to go out in order to feel safe. You need to go be with people. They don't have to be, they don't have to understand you. They don't have to be your people, but you have to be with people. You have to touch people. You have to be in connection, or something inside of you is not going to do well. And we know now 1 in 5 Americans feel like they are always or often lonely.
yeah.
1 in 5.
Wow.
200,000 people in the UK have not had a conversation with a friend or family member in more than a month.
Mm,
We have the affordability, I use that word intentionally, we can afford to live alone, but we can't afford to live alone, right? We can afford it, and it's in our, that's success, and that's, we'll let her stay in her own home and do her own thing, that's what you want to do. And by the way, it's not only elderly people. This is even worse in our young people, 18 to
mm,
21. The world is feeling very, very hostile to people, and they're retreating, and then they're getting lonely, and then they're becoming afraid, and so they're retreating more. And
mm.
so it's actually worse that as time goes on. And so if we can understand that loneliness is not your fault, it's not shameful. And I tell you, the shame is so deep inside of us. I just have to laugh because not that long ago I was on an airplane, and I was doing research on this book on loneliness, and I had forgotten to plug in my earphones. And so really loud on my computer, it said, "Loneliness, the study of blah, blah, blah." And I was like, shut the phone. I don't want to really go lonely. And then I just laughed, and I thought, oh my God, Robin, if you,
Yeah.
who know as much as you do, don't want anyone hearing that, that's bad. That's bad. And so we
Wow.
this, yeah. And I actually believe, and I wouldn't, burn at the stake for this one, but I'm getting close, that we're actually supposed to get lonely in this growth period,
Mm,
right? As we
mhm.
turn inward to find ourselves. I mean, I always say nobody soul searches on a good day. If you've got your boat and your picnic and your love and your all those things, like, that's not a soul searching day, most likely. And but we do need to soul search. The problem is that it's happening to so many people who have no idea how to soul search. They don't know how to turn inward in such a way that's actually functional and helping them, instead of shutting them down. And that's why we have a big log jam in this, because more and more people are having these experiences, and the culture does not teach you what to do with them.
No.
They don't teach you to say, okay, let's go and take this time and say, okay, who are you really?
Yeah, I mean, goodness, there's so much to unpack with this. I think you're 100% right. We don't have any kind of support in our culture around this. I mean, okay, meditation, mindfulness is becoming more, yoga, things like that, but I don't think you're taught. I mean, anything I have learned about kind of soul searching has come from a dark night of the soul.
Exactly. And
That's
that's
fiction.
that's built into the alchemy, right? That dark night of the soul is part of the journey. But because we don't have any grandmothers explaining the journey to us, we're
Yeah,
lost, right? We don't understand that, okay, this is your signal that it's time to figure out who you really are.
yeah,
And we still project so much outwards that we see what's happening out there, and the world is, it's not in its best shape right now, so it's just
mhm,
terrifying for a lot of people, especially sensitive people. And so there's just a lot of ways that it goes wrong, and then there's ways that we can turn ourselves toward it, which is what Goodnight Robin is about.
yeah.
it's
Tell us
it,
about it, please.
it's so small. It's the tiniest little thing. um it's kind of it So let me start out first with I've done a lot of social change projects, as you mentioned. The one that we did, that I think has been the most powerful, is Your Holiday Mom with LGBTQ youth, and we're just finishing another season. It's our 7th season, and basically moms, one mom a day writes a letter on a blog. It's totally online, so there's this, it's strictly a letter, and from Thanksgiving Day to New Year's Day every year. And we basically say, if your mom doesn't love you, we will.
Mm,
And here's what it's like to come over, and we'll go take a long snowy walk, and we'll talk about your life. And you talk, I've coached the letters to talk about what make someone feel at home and feel safe. And so we don't go into politics, we don't do that kind of stuff. We just really say, sorry you have to sit next to crazy Uncle Joe, somebody does every year, and we make you feel at home in our family. And what happens is, by proxy, when they read that, it's unbelievable in the comments what you hear. I remember in our first year, young woman wrote and said, um, I'm sitting here sobbing with my little brother. We never thought we'd hear a mother say, I love you.
oh my gosh.
And there's so many homelessness is on the rise, suicide risk, all of that. And so all we do, it costs like $15 a year, plus a little bit of, elbow grease, a lot of elbow grease, to be honest. And we save lives just by writing letters. And so that's what started. And then people were saying, well, could you do this year round? And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something year round, I want to do it for everyone.
Yeah.
And I've had this idea for 20 years of Goodnight Robin. I remember being a single mom, and my kids would be at their dad's, and I would be by myself, and I would go to bed and I would say, I don't have anyone to say goodnight to. And that was the loneliest point of the day.
Mm,
And I
mm,
said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could all just have someone to say goodnight to? And so 10 years later, I was really like, I really want to do the social change project. Now that I'm doing them, I know how to do them. I don't know how to do this one. And then podcasts came along. And I thought, that's perfect. That's exactly how I'm going to do it. And so I'm on every night with a little story and a kind-hearted good night. And that proxy of just having someone say, I know you're out there. I know you're out there. I know you're lonely. I know you don't have someone to say goodnight to. And I'm willing to be that for you, even if it's just, on a podcast or on YouTube. And it touches people and it gets in. And then slowly over time, we're also educating gently, not, nothing hit over the head, about loneliness, about what it is and why it's not your fault, and what you could do, and what I do, and what I go out and do. And I go to this meditation group, and this meditation group doesn't meditate the way that I would meditate at home or do meditate at home by myself. And so I could say, well, I'm not going because they don't do it my way. And I'm like, heck no, I get 7 or 8 hugs a day built into my 7 a.m. every time I go. I'm going
yeah.
because that's food.
Yeah.
I went through a period of time when I was in a new city and I was alone. And I actually began to feel like I was becoming emotionally malnourished.
Mm.
And that was like, oh, that's dangerous. That's not good. That's not good at all. So I started researching it and learning that, yeah, you actually need hugs. You actually need, well, at least touch. You need physical proximity. You need, your body is going to give you an alarm if you don't have it that says, we're not okay, we're not safe.
Amazing. Well, it reminds me, I know there was a study years ago of I think it was a girl that they kept completely isolated. She almost died. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for what you're doing and bringing this topic up. And I think your little story about being on the plane and it playing loud, like just even that
Yeah.
little bit of embarrassment or shame there, it just imagine those that really are feeling that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just become woven in to the culture. And I think what you're doing with Goodnight Robin is so powerful. And, it's almost like just for those that don't have that, they can get it through you. Even just hearing it with that authenticity, which you have, that can make a difference. It's incredible what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple. I tell people all the time,
Right.
what I love about social change projects is that nobody pays me to do them. So nobody can stop me.
That's right.
No one can stop me from having a Goodnight Robin podcast because I can. And
Right.
there's so many things we can do for each other. We have so many tools at our disposal. We have so much we can offer. And the thing is, we're happier when we offer it. Like that's the kicker. We're not happy when we only serve ourselves. Happiness studies have proven that.
Yeah.
It's when it's meaningful, when our life is meaningful, that we
Yeah. Absolutely.
are happy.
Oh my goodness. Well, Robin, where can people find you? I feel like we're gonna talk after we gotta do part two because I have so many.
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
It's been like beyond delightful to talk to you. And there's
Yeah.
so many other things I'm gonna circle, come back to, but where can people find you if they just are curious to learn more, about their own loneliness or questions about what you were talking about around mysticism and connecting beyond the five senses? I feel like this is something that I know many people in this community are waking up and more curious.
And they will continue to.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, those of you who serve that community, you will have work. um,
yeah,
something I can't do. Um,
yeah.
so you can find goodnightrobin.com and also Goodnight Robin on YouTube. We're new, so probably you'll hit a few Robin Williams things before you get to mine. But if you put Robin Rice in as well, you should find it. So there's that. I believe it's YouTube/Goodnight Robin. I think there's a letter in there. Anyway, we're new, so you'll find me out there. If you go to goodnightrobin.com, you'll find the YouTube. And then for me, you can just go to robinrice.com, tells you all about me and the various things that I do. And then I would really encourage training your inner warrior because it sounds kind of, contemporary and all that sort of thing. But it actually wakes you up. That's what it's meant to do.
Mm,
It's
awesome.
31 days. It's free. So, enjoy it. A lot of people start January 1st.
Oh, perfect. All right, everyone, training your inner warrior. I love that. I love that. I'm so on board. Who doesn't want to train their inner warrior? I mean, really.
It's super fun. People get mad if it's not there on time. Like, I'm just ready for my day.
That is awesome. I just seriously thank you. I'm so grateful you did wake up and that you chose to say yes. I remember for me, it didn't feel like a choice, but it is a choice. And thankful that you said yes, because it is clear what you're adding to this world, the light, the illumination, just,
Thank you.
yeah, it's very apparent. And, I just really honor you, and I'm so thankful. I know everybody listening in is uplifted and empowered and inspired by you. No question.
Wow, thank you. And I want to hear more about your awakening because it's when we talk about them together and have good conversations about them as well that people start to say, "Oh, well, wait a minute, I think that might have happened to me."
Yeah. All right, round two, Robin.
All right, you got it.
Robin, round two, round Robin.
Here we go.
Thank you.
You bet.